It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary, forgettable, the kind of day you'd never expect your whole life to tilt sideways. She was doing the laundry, something she'd done 1,000 times without a second thought. His shirt, the pale blue one he wore to client dinners, was crumpled at the bottom of the hamper. She picked it up, trying to untangle the sleeves, and that's when she saw it, a faint, rosy smudge on the inside of the collar. Lipstick. Not her shade. Not her brand. And definitely not hers. For a moment she stood frozen over the washing machine, heart thudding so hard she felt dizzy. She told herself it was nothing, makeup transfer from a cheek kiss, maybe. Some harmless mistake. But the longer she stared, the louder the voice in her head grew. How many cheek kisses leave lipstick hidden on the inside of a collar? She laid the shirt on the counter, fingertips brushing the stain like it might bite her. It felt ridiculous, standing there with a crumpled shirt like it was Exhibit A in a case she didn't want to believe was real. She thought about all his late nights at client meetings, the calls he took in the garage, the sudden weekends away that couldn't be rescheduled because big accounts don't wait. She'd laughed it off when her friends teased her, "Your man works too hard." She'd defended him every time someone said he seemed distant. She'd told herself this was what a real partnership looked like, trust first, always. When he came home that night, she tried to push the doubt down deep where it couldn't bloom. He swept in the front door with that easy grin that had charmed her since they were college kids with nothing but each other. He kissed her cheek, too quick, then headed straight for the fridge. "Long day?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light, normal, like there wasn't a wildfire behind her ribs. "The worst," he sighed, cracking open a beer. Boss is writing me about the new clients. I swear, if we land this one, it'll make the whole year." She nodded, staring at the collar of his clean shirt peeking out from under his coat, no stain tonight. She almost asked him about it right then. Almost blurted out, "Who's wearing rose lipstick?" But instead, she said, "You left your blue shirt in the laundry. Did you spill something on it?" He didn't miss a beat. He took a sip of beer, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Nah. Maybe ketchup? Had a burger in the car. Ketchup. She felt her jaw tighten. She'd wiped lipstick off her own napkins 1,000 times. She knew the difference, the sheen, the color. But she didn't argue. Not yet. She just smiled, nodding like the good wife he'd trained her to be, the one who never made scenes. They sat side by side that night, watching a movie neither of them paid attention to. She could feel the gap between them, wide, cold, and full of shadows. When he dozed off on the couch, she slipped his phone from his pocket. Her hands trembled so hard she nearly dropped it. She hated herself for it, she'd never snooped before. She'd always believed that trust was stronger than curiosity. His screen was blank, locked tight. He'd changed his passcode, not that she'd ever needed it before. He'd always tossed his phone onto the counter without a second thought. Now it was glued to his hand or hidden in his jacket. She set it back on the coffee table and sat there in the glow of the TV, the fake laughter of the sitcom bouncing around the room while her mind played something much darker. A smear of lipstick wasn't enough to burn down a marriage. Not yet. But it was enough to light the match. And now she knew, there was more beneath that collar, more behind every late meeting, more than she was ready to admit. She'd spent years being the woman who kept the peace. Who stayed silent so he'd stay comfortable. But when she finally fell asleep that night, shirt folded neatly on top of the dryer, she felt something shift under her ribs, a seed of something harder than suspicion. Not rage. Not yet. Just the first sliver of a promise, "You won't make me swallow this lie forever." The stain should have been easy to forget. He counted on that, on her being the kind of woman who'd tell herself, "It's not worth a fight." She'd done it before, with smaller things, the unexplained bar tabs, the perfume sample she found in his glove box, the text message from a number saved without a name. She'd let it all wash down the drain of "we're just tired." He's stressed. Every marriage has rough patches. But once you see a crack, you see every other one too. A week later, he claimed he had to go out of town for a conference. A new client dinner, he said. She packed his bag for him like she always did. Folded his shirts, tucked in his cologne, kissed him goodbye at the door while he gave her that same tired grin, the one that used to make her feel lucky, safe. He promised he'd be back Friday night, maybe Saturday morning if the meetings ran long. She spent the first night alone pacing the kitchen, stirring a cup of tea that went cold before she ever tasted it. She told herself she was paranoid. She repeated the word like a prayer, as if it could drown out the voice in her head screaming, "Check. Just check." So she did. She pulled up their bank account on her laptop. She'd handled the bills for years, he'd always said she was good with numbers. She'd called that trust. Now she called it stupidity. The charges were right there, bold as neon signs. A hotel she'd never heard of. Dinner for two at a steakhouse he'd claimed was too fancy for them. Room service. An Uber back and forth when he'd said he'd be staying late at the conference center. Her tea sat forgotten while she clicked back through months of statements. She saw the same pattern, charges on his card in places he shouldn't have been. Restaurant reservations for two, not one. Little gifts from jewelry stores that never found their way into her dresser drawers. When he called the next day, she played along. His voice on the other end of the line was so casual, almost bored. "Hey babe. How's everything? Just heading into another session. Might run late tonight." She forced a smile he couldn't see. "You're working so hard. You know I do this for us, right?" She almost laughed then, not because it was funny, but because it was obscene. The way he said us when he really meant me and whoever I want, whenever I want. After she hung up, she didn't cry. She thought she would. She'd imagined herself curled up on the bathroom floor, sobbing like every wronged wife in a cheap movie. But instead, she felt a cold calm settle in her chest, something deeper than anger. She started saving screenshots, the hotel invoices, the restaurant bills, the Uber receipts with timestamps that didn't match his excuses. Each file went into a folder on her desktop she named "For Me." Not for revenge, not yet. Just so she'd never again let him convince her she was crazy. She kept her questions to herself when he came home that Saturday. He looked tired, too many late nights playing the doting partner to someone else, maybe. He brought her flowers. A sad, limp bouquet from the gas station, as if that could erase the smell of hotel soap that clung to his collar. She tucked the flowers in a vase and thanked him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That night, she lay awake beside him while he snored softly, drool gathering at the corner of his mouth. She stared at the ceiling and thought about all the times she'd said, "I'd never be that woman. I'd never let someone make me small." She realized she already had, but not anymore. The pattern was clear now, he counted on her silence. He counted on her fear. He counted on her not having the stomach to make noise. But she could feel it growing inside her, that stubborn, quiet fury that needed no permission to exist. She knew he'd beg her to keep quiet if she ever dared to use what she'd found. And she knew, one day soon, he'd find out exactly how loud she could be. She didn't plan it. She'd imagined it 1,000 different ways, dramatic scenes, shouting in the driveway, throwing his clothes onto the front lawn like she'd seen in trashy TV shows. But when the moment finally came, it was quiet. Almost gentle. The way something rots under the floorboards for years, then splits open with a whisper instead of a bang. He came home late, again. She heard the car in the driveway long after midnight, the soft slam of the door, the hushed shuffle of his keys in the lock. She'd been sitting at the kitchen table for hours, her laptop closed but her mind wide awake. Her For Me folder sat on a flash drive tucked under her palm, warm from where she'd pressed it like a lucky charm. He smelled like stale cologne and expensive bourbon when he walked in. He froze when he saw her, like a kid caught stealing candy. But the mask slipped back on fast, that tired smile that used to fool her when they were young and stupid. "Babe? What are you doing up?" She just looked at him, really looked. The way his hair was tousled in that carefully accidental way. The lipstick stain on his collar, bolder this time, not even hidden. She wondered if the other woman laughed about her while smearing her signature color onto him like a brand. "Where were you?" she asked. Her voice was steady. The steadiness surprised her. He scoffed, tossing his keys onto the counter. "I told you, drinks with clients. Big deal. Don't start, okay?" She opened her hand. The flash drive caught the dull glow of the overhead light. "I know." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The hotel. The dinners. The jewelry. "I know everything." He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You've been spying on me now? Jesus. You sound insane." She pushed her chair back and stood, just enough to meet his eyes head-on. Don't call me insane. Not when you're the one lying to my face." Something flickered across his expression, surprise, then calculation. Then that ugly twist in his mouth, the smirk she hadn't realized she hated until now. "So what, you're gonna leave?" He spread his arms, a mock invitation. You think anyone's gonna believe you? You'll just embarrass yourself." "You'll embarrass me." She stared at him, this man she'd shared a bed with, planned babies with, spent years folding his socks and pretending the world outside their house didn't exist. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't even sorry. He was only scared she'd ruin the story he told everyone else about the perfect wife at home. He stepped closer, dropped his voice like he was sharing a sweet secret. Listen. Let's not make this messy. You're not going to tell anyone, okay? I'll stop. I promise. You're not going to call my boss with this crap. You owe me that." She flinched, just a fraction, at "oh." Like he'd bought her silence with every lie. "And if I do?" she asked, her tone so flat he didn't catch the edge of it. He shrugged, casual as anything. If you do, you'll look bitter. Crazy. I'll tell them you're losing it. Nobody wants the office to know my personal life. You'll ruin everything. For me. For you. You're not stupid enough to do that, babe. Babe. As if the word still meant softness instead of the chain he'd wrapped around her neck. She let him walk past her to the stairs, so smug he couldn't even feel the ground slipping out from under him. She pressed her palm to the flash drive once more, her pulse steady. He was right about one thing, she wasn't stupid. She'd spent years being silent so he could keep pretending. But now the silence was over, and the proof was louder than he ever imagined. She turned off the kitchen light and whispered to the empty room, just to feel the promise on her tongue, "Let's see how quiet you are when your boss knows the truth." She tried to keep the mask on for a while. She thought if she acted normal, he might slip up again, give her something undeniable, the last nail in the coffin of their so-called marriage. But he didn't even bother hiding it. That was what stunned her most, not the lipstick stain, not the hotel bills, not the cheap flowers or the smirk when he called her paranoid. No, what finally cracked her open was how utterly sure he was that she'd never do a thing about it. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. She'd just put a load of laundry in the dryer and was folding towels on the bed when she heard his voice drifting down the hallway. He was on the phone in the garage, his favorite hideaway when he wanted to talk without her hearing. He'd always claimed it was for privacy when he took work calls, but she knew better now. She stood at the half-open door, the laundry basket pressed to her hip, and listened. She's clueless. Always has been. No, she'll never do anything. She's too soft. I told her it'd ruin me if she said a word, and you know her, she'd never hurt me. She thinks being a good wife means staying quiet. He laughed then. It wasn't a nervous laugh, or a slip. It was a cruel, warm laugh, like the joke was so obvious she should have gotten it ages ago. She felt the heat drain from her face. She imagined herself in his mind, small, obedient, spineless. The woman who'd stand at dinner parties smiling like nothing was wrong while he slipped away for a call, a text, a taste of someone else. When he came back inside, he found her sitting at the kitchen table. She watched him with an expression so blank it made him hesitate. He leaned down and kissed the top of her head, like always, acting like the perfect husband. She didn't flinch, didn't show her disgust. She just let him walk away, already planning. That night, after he fell asleep with the TV blaring, she went to her folder, the growing file of screenshots, bank statements, hotel bookings. She opened the email draft she'd saved weeks ago, addressed to someone who'd always lingered at the edge of her fear, his boss. The man he always bragged about impressing. The man who held the key to the company's biggest contracts, the same contracts her husband had been lying about for months. She read through the draft again, short, factual, almost polite. No sob story. Just proof, this is your trusted senior associate. These are his expense reports. This is who he's really taking to the hotel on your company's dime. These are the receipts, the timestamps, the selfies he didn't think I'd find. She imagined the look on his face when he realized she'd sent it. She pictured the way his mother would hiss her name like a curse for embarrassing the family. She pictured the mistress, the office gossip, the neighbors who thought she was sweet, harmless, easy to ignore. Let them talk. Let them see her for once. She saved the email again, didn't hit send yet. She wanted him to feel the tremor under his feet first, the one that said the ground was about to give way. She slipped into bed beside him and lay there, listening to him snore, so sure of himself in the dark. She rested a hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat steady and cold. He thought he could scare her with the threat of ruin, don't tell my boss, don't make a scene, you'd only hurt yourself. But he didn't understand. The silence wasn't to protect her anymore. It had only ever protected him. And now that silence was gone. She never thought she'd be the kind of person to do it, to gather up every scrap of betrayal, every photo and receipt, and package it like a gift with a bomb inside. But betrayal does strange things to you. It strips away the part of you that flinches at what people will think. It hardens the softest parts until you feel steel in your veins where trust used to live. By the time she was done, her folder was thick. Screenshots, printed emails, copies of hotel bills, all lined up like dominoes. She didn't just have proof he'd cheated, she had proof he'd lied about company money, expensed dinners for 2 as client meetings, booked luxury hotels for networking nights. She'd done the math. Every lie he told her was a lie he'd told his company too. She sat at the dining room table on a Wednesday night, the baby monitor humming softly beside her. Her husband was out, at work drinks, he'd said. She wondered which lipstick he'd be wiping off his collar tonight. She almost felt sorry for him, picturing how calm she looked sitting there under the warm kitchen light, a glass of water by her elbow, her laptop open to the company website. She typed out the email carefully, not a word out of place. No anger. No big declarations. Just facts, clean and sharp. To whom it may concern, I feel you should know that your employee, his name, has been using company funds to support an extramarital affair under the guise of business expenses. Please see attached for receipts, hotel invoices, and messages that clearly show personal misuse. I thought you would want to know, as this reflects on your firm's reputation. She read it twice, 3 times. Her pulse was steady. She attached the file, double-checked the email address for his boss. It was right there in the company directory, staring back at her like an open door she'd been too polite to walk through for years. She didn't tell anyone what she was doing, no calls to her mother, no long texts to her best friend. This was her truth to drop, her silence to break. She hovered over send for a single breath, thought about how many nights she'd laid awake with his lies curled up next to her like a second shadow, then she pressed the button. It was done. Her hands shook a little when she closed the laptop. Not because she was scared, but because she felt something leaving her, like she'd cracked open a dam that had been holding back every scream she'd swallowed for him. When he came home later that night, he smelled like cheap cologne and expensive whiskey. He leaned over her on the couch, all fake concern. "Ah, you waited up. You're so sweet, you know that?" She looked up at him, really looked. She saw the man who'd told her to be a good wife and keep her mouth shut. The man who thought his job made him untouchable. She smiled, so soft, he didn't even flinch. "Get some sleep," she said, patting his chest like she was tucking in a child. He blinked, confused at the softness. He didn't know that the storm was already rolling toward him, silent but unstoppable. Upstairs, she brushed her teeth, wiped the smudges from the bathroom mirror. She studied her reflection like she was meeting herself for the first time in years. The version of her who'd sat quiet, kept the peace, let him write the script? She was gone. This woman standing here now, she could burn down a lie with nothing more than the truth. In the morning, the real show would begin. She'd already taken her voice back. Next, he'd watch her use it. It didn't take long for the call to come. When she saw his number light up her phone that afternoon, she already knew what he'd say before he opened his mouth. She could picture it, him pacing in the office parking lot, tie loose around his neck, sweat on his brow while his so-called buddies looked the other way. The boss had seen every receipt, every grainy hotel invoice, every selfie of him with a woman who wasn't his wife, all laid out in the neat, polite envelope she'd sent with no return address. When she answered, she could hear the panic vibrating in his voice before he even spoke. "What did you do?" He didn't sound like the confident man who once told her, "Nobody needs to know our business. You'd just ruin everything." No, now he sounded like a cornered animal, wild and desperate. She didn't bother asking how the meeting went. She already knew. His boss was a man who valued image above all else, a family man, the type who made grand speeches about integrity and trust at the holiday party. A scandal like this, laced with forged expense reports and affair-fueled travel bills? It was poison in a tailored suit. "You humiliated me," he spat. Asterisk, "You know how this looks? They think I'm a liar." She let out a cold, flat laugh. Asterisk, "You are a liar." He sputtered, grasping for the script he always used when cornered. Asterisk, "You've destroyed our marriage. I trusted you not to say anything." "No," she cut in, her voice level, so calm it rattled him more than any screaming ever could. "You told me to stay silent. You told me I owed you my silence while you embarrassed me, used me, and lied to my face. You told me I'd ruin you if I ever opened my mouth." She could hear him breathing, heavy and ragged. She could imagine him standing outside his office, coat half buttoned, colleagues whispering behind glass doors about the man who thought he could cheat on his wife, lie on his reports, and walk away unscathed. He tried again, softening his voice like he thought she'd melt. Asterisk, "Please. We can fix this. I can talk to HR. We can say it was all a misunderstanding. No, she felt a surge of relief wash through her, like fresh air in a room that had been shut for too long. There is no way to fix. I told the truth. You made the mess. Now you can live in it. He didn't get it, he never would. He'd always assumed she was too careful, too polite, too afraid to stand up and say what she knew. He'd mistaken her patience for weakness, her loyalty for permission. When he came home that night, his eyes were red, shoulders hunched. The man who once swaggered around the house bragging about his big deals and loyal team looked smaller now, shriveled by the truth he'd forced her to bury for too long. She didn't shout. She didn't even stand up from the kitchen table where she sat, her laptop open to a fresh set of bank statements, the ones that no longer bore his name. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back like a flame. You told me to stay silent, she said, her voice steady. And I did, until you gave me a reason not to. He tried to say he was sorry. He tried to say he loved her, that they could rebuild. But the words sounded hollow, like a half-finished lie he couldn't afford anymore. She stood and walked past him, her keys in hand. The locks would be changed by morning. His name would come off the account, off the deed, off every piece of paper she once trusted him to sign beside hers. She stepped out onto the porch that night and felt the air hit her face, crisp and real. For the first time in years, she realized how light her chest felt, no secrets pressing down on her ribs, no fear of what he might do if she dared to speak. She hadn't ruined him. She'd simply stopped protecting him from the truth he'd written with his own lies. She'd stopped being the woman who stayed silent so he could keep playing loyal husband by day and cheating man by night. This was her silence now, peaceful, final, and entirely hers.